down there, Con.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have been away from the podcast for a few weeks now, but we are finally back. Slade has to work tonight, so to whoever his coworkers are that called out tonight, suck a dick.
Yeah.
But so we're missing him. Hopefully, he's having a fun night at work. Hopefully, nobody fell off a ladder again from hanging Christmas lights. Um, there was a joke I was gonna make about. I'm just gonna keep it to myself though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have a lot to get through tonight. We actually have a pretty full show. What we thought was going to be a pretty calm week in a lot of these areas turned out to be pretty hectic overall. Um, First and foremost, we're going to go ahead and dive into the NHL update for you guys. We just hit the quarter-way mark. We're a little bit past it now, so we're going to go ahead and look at the standings, look at some of the point leaders, goal leaders, who's the best goalies right now, and just some other headlines going around. Before we get into the standings, not just because I'm a Penguins fan, but just in general, the news came out. It came out Wednesday that Chris Letang suffered a stroke on Monday. This is his second stroke, so obviously we're wishing a full recovery for him and hope he gets well soon. I also just realized my shirt does not blend in well with the camera at all. Terrible segue, but again, we hope he gets well. I mean, not just because I'm a Penguins fan, but he's somebody I've watched growing up and falling in love with the sport of hockey. And we definitely hope he has a speedy recovery and can get back on the ice here soon. So let's go ahead and get into these standings. So Boston leads the way in the Atlantic Series or Atlantic Division. One of the hottest starts we have ever seen from a team. They have set the NHL record for longest home streak. I believe that's at like 12 games now. They have not lost at home, and Toronto has also had a really strong start to the season, sitting there at 35 points as well. Florida, who we knew was going to fall off from last year and struggle a little bit, has really struggled to get it going here in the earlier part of the season, sitting back there in 24 points. And then kind of the rest of the order there in the Atlantic is business as usual, I would say. We knew Ottawa would definitely struggle a little bit. I thought they would be better than this with Giroux coming there, but they continue to struggle. Buffalo looks at least a little bit better this year, but again, difficult team to watch up there in Buffalo. And then I don't know if I forget where the newspaper was, but they were saying, games tonight and stuff. And of course, the Buffalo Bills are playing the New England Patriots tonight. And the newspaper said the Buffalo Sabres were playing the Patriots, which I'm sure the Sabres would probably go play football instead. Over in the Metro Division, I feel like the Devils have not gotten talked about enough. Every time I'm watching ESPN or the NHL Network, they're just talking about Boston and how impressive Boston is. This is a New Jersey team that I think is more impressive because I don't think anybody saw this coming from this team at all. I think everybody thought they'd be much improved. They could contend for the playoffs, but here they are. They're tied with Boston atop the standings in the East Division as a whole at 38 points. Just an outrageous start from them. A lot of fun hockey being played there in New Jersey. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun for them to, of course, be winning after struggling for so many seasons here lately to even just get wins in the columns on some nights. The Islanders also having a great bounce back year, sitting second in that division right now. Carolina just beat Pittsburgh on, I believe it was Tuesday night. So rough night for me, but at least I believe Pittsburgh did get a point out of that. So Carolina is keeping pace in the Metro there. Rangers, again, kind of sluggish out the gate with a lot of those losses from the all season. The most surprising team out of all this to me is Washington and how much they've moved on from Ilya Sorkin in the offseason. Darcy Kemper has come in, and I said it to begin with when they made that move. I didn't think Kemper was a better goalie than Sorkin. And here he is. Sorkin's on his new team in Toronto playing some of the best hockey we've seen. And Kemper is continuing to struggle in Washington. Before we move on to the West, Nick, I just want to get your thoughts here on the East standings.
Yeah. So first thing, it's good to see Boston continuing that strong start. This was a team that we had talked about a little bit previously. Hadn't really added much, but also hadn't really lost much. They kept their core group together. I forget which one was it. Marchand that was injured.
Yeah, Marchand.
Okay, yeah. Marchand, yeah, sorry. He was injured. He's back. They're still playing well. Toronto's up there, but don't worry, they'll face a game 7 in the playoffs at some point. Um, And yeah, as far as that side goes, other than the start by Boston, like you said, everything's kind of where we thought it would be. Florida down there a little bit, but it is what it is. Still early. And then over in the Metropolitan, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that New Jersey and New York Islanders would have been at the top of the Metropolitan standings, I would have called you an idiot. And nobody really saw this coming. I mean, the Islanders had a decent team last year, but not great. And New Jersey's kind of been that team, yeah, they're young. They have some potential, but they're just not getting there yet. And that young potential has shown up to start this season off. Great start by them. And everything else kind of falls into place there. We'll see if New York or if the Islanders and New Jersey can keep this up and stay towards the top of these standings as the season goes on. The biggest surprise for me on the Metropolitan side is Columbus. We thought with Gaudreau that they were going to make a huge step. This was a team that was one spot out of the playoffs last year and had made a run late. They were a decent amount away, but had made a run late. And here they are with only 16 points. A quarter of the way into the season. Definitely not where they wanted. Woo! Oh, we might have to censor that out there. I don't know if we can say that, but yeah, 16 points. Definitely not where they want to be. Definitely not where I thought they were going to be. So we'll see if they can pick that up as the season goes
Yeah, I had to change my shirt. It was distracting me way too much watching the
on.
Lions just moving the camera. But yeah, definitely a surprising start from. I mean, like I said, Ottawa and both Columbus, big additions in the off season. Teams that we thought would take steps forward. I really don't know what to point the finger at with either of those two teams. I mean, maybe goaltending, but again, at least for you look at Columbus, their goalie's getting 30, 40 saves a night. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how we watch these teams adjust throughout the season. If any of them can kind of turn this fortune around, we shall wait and see. We're going to go ahead and look at the West here now. Dallas leads the way in the Central. Slade's St. Louis Blues are kind of struggling, but they're right there in the middle of the pack with Minnesota and Nashville tied at 22 points. Colorado, they did lose a couple key pieces over the offseason. I thought they would struggle a little bit, and again, it's early. We're only a quarter of the way into the year. Excuse me. And so there's still plenty of time for them to turn around, but it's clear that this is not the same dominant team that they had last year. Over in the Pacific Division, to me, the surprise of the year, I knew Seattle would be much better this year. I did not have them being second in the division, especially even again we're a quarter way into the season. I thought they'd be middle of the pack this year as a whole. There's still time for them to gain ground or lose ground as we go, but just to be this high up this early in the season is very surprising and very encouraging to see. And again, I said this last year. I think Seattle was one of the best run teams last year. They didn't get the results and stuff, but as a first year team, they learned from the mistakes of Vegas, and they built a really good team. I think this is gonna be a team that's here to last. Especially, I think they still have more footing to get underneath of them, some more of their draft picks to develop. But I think this is going to be a team that is here to stay once they get that core developed, once they get that youth developed. And Seattle's going to be a lot of fun to watch for years to come, and not so much drama filled like Vegas is. Obviously, Vegas having a very good year so far this year, leading the Pacific with 35 points. The surprise here to me is Anaheim struggling as much as they are. I really thought that their rookie core would develop from last year. I thought they would be in contention for the playoffs, and right now it looks like they're in contention for the first overall pick. They're last place in points with 14 right now. I believe it took them like 20 games just
Yeah.
to get a win. Obviously not 20, but it took a while for them to get some wins along with Vancouver. But even Vancouver is playing much better now. So I'll let you talk about your Kraken here a little bit.
Yeah, so as far as the Kraken go, I mean, I've said this probably every time. Our offense looks great, and it just continues to look better and better. We just broke not the record, but set the record for this season as far as most goals in a game with our game we played against Los Angeles. We ended up winning 9-8 in overtime. I had to stop watching before the end of the second quarter. Actually, we had the season record for goals in a game, like I think it was 30 minutes in. And I shortly after that I couldn't watch it anymore. I was like, I'm literally gonna have a heart attack every time somebody scored, somebody else or the other team scored. It was nerve wracking to say the least. But yeah, the defenses looked good most games. Obviously, no defense was played the other night. But if we can get back on track playing defense, I like where we're sitting. I like where we're at. We have wins against Vegas and Colorado so far this year already. And I think 3-0 against the Kings. I'm glad to see where we're at. I'm not going to say a whole lot. Not going to get ahead of myself. But it's good to see. As far as surprises on this list, Anaheim's definitely one of them. Like you said, I thought the youth was going to develop a little better. I don't know what the number was that it took to get wins, but I know it took, I think it was 23 games to get their first regulation win. Might have been 22. Um, Actually, I think it was 22 because I think they've played like two or three since then. But anyway, definitely surprised to see them all the way down there. I thought maybe they'd be middle of the pack as far as the other side of the West goes. Yeah, like you said, Colorado lost some pieces, so they're still up there, but not quite up top. Dallas has had an amazing start to their season. I did not see that coming. I thought they were going to be a playoff team, but definitely not, sitting at the top of the Central as far as that goes. St. Louis, I did update Slade the other night. They did start to pick up some there, so hopefully Slade will have some good things to talk about the next time we talk about the NHL here with them. And then I think that's pretty much it as far as what sticks out to me. Calgary's down a little farther than what I thought they would be, but again, first quarter, we'll see how things develop come halfway through the season.
Yeah. Uh, this is my favorite part of the NHL season is usually this part until we get to the playoffs, just because everything's so competitive. You can't invest too much in what's going on with your team right now. Like I said, the Penguins had a red hot start, and then they went on a cold stretch for about 2 weeks, and now they're kind of fluctuating in the middle. And they're if the playoffs started today, yeah, we'd be in it, and so on and so forth. But it's so much fun because everybody's still so invested in the season. Once we get to halfway and later, hey, we're not going to make the playoffs this year, and then you see a lot of teams start scrapping and preparing for the next year, and it sucks. I mean, unless your team's going to go play them, and it's a nice win night, but it's not as much fun to watch then unless your team is in a heated playoff race. Um, so it's definitely a lot of fun. We're gonna go ahead real quick and look at the league leaders in points, goals, goals allowed average, and wins. Points. No surprise to see Connor McDavid at the top of the league. He leads the way with 41 points. Jason Robertson to me is a breakout player so far this year for Dallas. Second in points, first in goals. He has 36 points right now for Dallas. Leon Draisaitl, again, the 1-2 punch for Edmonton with McDavid and Draisaitl is what carries them as far as they do every year. If they could just get a little bit more help on the defensive side and in goal, some nights it would definitely help a lot. Draisaitl also has 36 points. Nikita Kucherov for Tampa Bay continues to just play at top tier levels like he has for so many years now. Sits there with 35 points, and David Pastrnak, Mr. Pasta himself from Boston, has 32 points. Leading the way with goals, like what we just mentioned, Jason Robertson from Dallas with 19 goals. McDavid has 18. Bo Horvat, who has really been the kind of leader for Vancouver to start getting wins in the win column and salvage the early part of the season and give that city and that team some hope that, hey, maybe we can turn this around and make some noise in the West here. And possibly, if things fall right, we can make a playoff run. We'll have to wait and see still. He has 17 goals. Draisaitl with 15 and Pastrnak with 14. Looking at the best goalies in the league, Linus Olmark is the best through and through so far through the early part of the season. He leads the league in goals allowed average with 2, and he also has the most wins at 13. Uh, Ilya Samsonov for Toronto, um, and I messed that up earlier. I said the wrong name for Toronto, but Samsonov for Toronto, 2.09 goals allowed. Vita Vanek for New Jersey with 2.12 goals allowed. Ilya Sorkin for the Islanders, 2.18 goals allowed, and Connor Hellerbuck for Winnipeg with 2.29. And then wins, like we just said, Olmark with 13, Martin Jones from Seattle with 12, Logan Thompson from Vegas with 12, Hellerbuck with 11, and Vanek with 11 as well. Nick, your thoughts on that before we move on real quick?
Yeah, so the first thing that sticks out to me is Robertson sitting atop with 19, or even McDavid right behind at 18. Throw Horvat in there at 17. We're 21 games in, so you think about these players are on pace for almost 80 goals. 70 to 80 goals, which it's absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, they're more than likely not going to end up there. But to be this hot early in the season is never a bad thing. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to Martin Jones here because he was supposed to be our backup goalie. Philip Grubauer went out. I think it was the first game that he played. He ended up finishing the game, but had been out for a little with injury. And Martin Jones has stepped up, played absolutely insane. Actually, there was a comment that he made at one point. Somebody asked him, like, how does it feel to be playing a game, one night and then 2 nights later playing another game, and he was kind of like, "Look, like I've been a starting goalie in this league before. Basically, don't disrespect me." And he's come out and really balled out. So this entire list here of the leaders really puts into perspective um, what kind of good hockey we have going on right now. And as the biggest surprise to me, as far as what's not on this list, is any other than goalie is any Toronto Maple Leaf skater. Mainly because Mitch Marner has been on an insane streak right now. I believe he just upped his streak to 18 games with a point after an empty net goal. So I'm sure we'll see him and maybe one of the scorers around him, like Matthews, pop up into some of these lists as the season goes on.
Yeah, Mitch Marner is absolutely having a great year. I Matthews definitely gets a lot of the attention more so than anybody else, as well as I'm staring at his face and I can't think of it. Um, ever since he left the Islanders, I can't remember his name anymore.
I know. I went to say it when I was talking about it too, and it was like,
Yeah.
and it wasn't there, so I just didn't bother.
But yeah, no, Mitch Marner is definitely having a great year. Let's pull up his points here and see how many he has right now. Yeah, you are right. He extended a streak last night on an empty net goal. Mitch Marner sits tied eighth in league. Sidney Crosby is actually seventh, but Mitch Marner has 29 points right now as we sit quarter of the way through the season. We're gonna go ahead. Slade was supposed to talk to us about some NBA, so we're gonna update you guys on the standings real quick, and just let you know what's going on in the NBA right now. Uh, so right now, Boston leads the East. I don't think there's any surprise there. Cleveland 4 games back. Milwaukee 2 games back. The big surprise to me right now is how poorly Charlotte is playing. I mean, this is a team that's been in the play-in games the last few years for the playoffs, but nonetheless made it in. They invested heavily this all season. They got a new coach, but here they are. They're sitting, 3 spots away from last place. Detroit's in last, Orlando's second to last, and there's Charlotte. Just really struggling to do anything early in the season here. There was a big hire in the offseason. MJ got tired of the old coach not being able to get past the play-in round of the playoffs. There's been a lot of talk as well um, here in Charlotte that the new coach, he's going to be out after this season, and Jay Wright is going to be heavily pursued. Jay Wright, of course, just retired from Villanova, said he wanted to take the year off. So there's a lot of talk about him possibly coming to the NBA next year. But before we talk about the Western Conference, Nick, just your thoughts on the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, so I did just want to mention. I know Lamelo Ball. I can't remember. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I don't watch a whole lot of NBA, but I believe he recently got injured. If I remember, I don't think he came back. I think he recently got injured. Is what happened. He might have even been injured, came back and got injured again. I don't remember for sure. I just remember hearing some about that. So we'll have to look into that. It could be why you boys are struggling a little bit. Um, no, but kind of as we expected, Boston, Milwaukee at the top. They've been there the past that handful of years, at least that I can think of. Cleveland right now playing some good basketball. I think as that team gels more, um, just gets that time with each other. I think Cleveland's really gonna make a push there. They're only sitting 1 game behind Milwaukee. And in my opinion, I know the records don't necessarily say this, but you got those top three, and then it's kind of everybody else
Mhm.
in the Eastern Conference. Philly underperforming as usual. The Nets down there at 8, it makes me happy, and everything else just kind of makes sense. So
Yeah, I guess the most surprising thing to me, at least for Boston, is, um, I mean, they just had this huge head coaching change before the season even started. And now that head coach is in Brooklyn, and again, he's struggling in Brooklyn, even more so than I'd say Steve Nash was. But just how well Boston has played. I believe it's the last 2 years now, we've seen Boston come out of the gates and struggle in the early part of the season and then turn it on midway through to the end. And here, they're coming out strong. Hopefully that sets the tone for the rest of their season if they're able to keep that up and then also just carry that into the playoffs as well. As we look at the Western Conference, no surprise with Phoenix at the top. I am a little surprised by Denver being in second. Again, I feel like this is a team that is come out and hung around the middle of the pack throughout the full season, not just the beginning or the end. They've always been that 4, 5, 6 team in the West, unless they're getting a really hot streak, and Phoenix is playing bad, and so is Golden State. Well, here we are. Golden State's playing bad. Phoenix is still playing well, and Denver's only one game out of first. So some promising signs out of Denver there for them. The big surprise to me overall is New Orleans being in second. Uh, yeah, obviously getting why can't I think of his name? The fat guy. They got him
Zion.
back. Yeah, Zion. There we go. Um, Getting him back obviously helped a lot, but just overall, this team is playing very, very well this year to start. Memphis in fourth, uh, Clippers in sixth, the Kings and or excuse me, Clippers in fifth, Kings in sixth, the Jazz in seventh. And again, like I just mentioned, Golden State struggling to start the year here. They're down in eighth, Minnesota in ninth, and Portland in 10th. Lakers still suck because Anthony Brown and LeBron James are washed. But Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah. So like you said, Phoenix at first, not really much different to expect there. Denver definitely giving them a run for their money. Big surprises here for me. Um, I guess the first one would be like you said, Sacramento in six. They're playing some good basketball. They're a good young team. Um, Golden State at eight. Yeah, I know we're coming to the end of that dynasty, but for the players that they still have there, I'm sure none of them are happy sitting at 11-11, especially because they came out of the gate hot. Um, and then yeah, Lakers still suck. Dallas at 10 is very shocking too because it's a team that we see make a playoff run last year. Luka couldn't only do so much though. And yeah, Lakers. I mean, I'm pretty sure they started like 0-10, maybe close to that, maybe 0-8. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But to see them at 8-12 now, they're catching some footing. Maybe we'll see Anthony Davis has put together a stretch of a couple good games. Braun's still Braun. He's still going to put up 30 points, almost triple double. But it's that supporting cast around him that's struggling. They put Russell Westbrook at the six, and he's finally actually acting like he remembers how to play basketball again. So I don't know. We'll see as the season goes on how the Lakers turn around. I think there's a lot of talk about Brown's going here, or he's going to join Curry, or he's going to Charlotte to join. We'll see what happens. It's LeBron. He'll take his talents to wherever the hell he feels will cause the most talk about him. So yeah, we'll see as the season goes on.
Yeah. And then just real quick, the other surprising thing to me is Portland being at 10. This is the team coming into the season with when trading away a lot of their stars. Lillard went to Cleveland. They scrapped that whole team, and everybody thought, okay, they're just going to be tanking and trying to get some draft picks back. Here they are. If the playoffs started today, they are in the playoff spot, playing game. So very surprising start for me to see them to kick off the season here, sitting at 11-11, tied with the record for Golden State and Minnesota as well. So good for them going out there and proving a lot of people wrong. We're going to shift over to football now. We're going to talk a little bit of the NFL. We are 6 weeks away from the end of the season. As we're sitting here talking, New England and Buffalo are getting ready to kick off. So Nick, go ahead and walk us through some NFL talk.
Yeah. So it's a wild year in the NFL. The NFC East is the best division. I think we've talked about it before. The AFC East is the second best division. It's absolutely wild. We'll go ahead and break some stuff down here for you. So Phillies. Oh, go ahead. You want to say something?
No, no, I was just.
Oh, no. You good, you good. All right, so Philly's still sitting atop the NFC East and atop of the NFL at 10-1. Dallas right behind them, 8-3 in the NFC East, and the Giants and Washington tied at 7 wins, getting ready to play twice in the next 3 weeks at 7-4 and 7-5 respectfully. In the NFC North, Minnesota up top, and then it's everybody else 5 games behind them at least. We got Detroit at 4-7, which is starting to gain some momentum. That was kind of the big surprise for me. Their defense carried them to the 3 wins I think they had last year. Coming in, their offense was supposed to be better. Their offense has been playing well, and the defense just hasn't shown up. That defense and offense can show up at the same time. Watch out. And then Green Bay right behind them at 4-8, and Chicago sitting there at 3-9 in the fight for that first draft pick. And then in the NFC South, we have Tampa Bay at 5-6, Atlanta at 5-7, Carolina at 4-8, and New Orleans at 4-8. Big thing here, any single record in the NFC East would win the NFC South if the season ended today. I didn't expect a whole lot out of the NFC South, but I mean, wow. There's a video of Nick Wright out there talking about how Tom Brady and Tampa Bay are going to walk into the playoffs at like 8-9, and then face like Daniel Jones and all these bum QBs. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm kind of hoping Atlanta or Carolina can make a run here. And then last in the NFC, we have the NFC West. San Francisco sitting at 7-4, kind of a surprise there. It's a good record, but I think they could be better. They're probably not happy with where they're at. Seattle at 6-5, absolutely laughable because fuck Russell Wilson and the Broncos. Arizona sitting at 4-8. Haha, Call of Duty came out, and the Los Angeles Rams, probably the shock of the year in the NFL, sitting at 3-8. I know they lost the big left tackle. I can't remember
Whitworth.
his name. Yes, Whitworth. I know they lost him, but you can't tell me that was
I mean, he was
the
old as
only.
hell. Yeah,
Yeah, you
that
can't.
is
He
not the
couldn't have
problem.
been the only thing holding up that offensive line. I don't know what they got going on in Los Angeles. I think fuck them picks finally caught up to bite him in the ass. But that's the way she goes.
Yeah.
So what do you see here that's surprising?
Um, for me, I think the biggest surprise is how poorly Green Bay is playing. I understand losing Devontae Adams was huge, and we joked that Rodgers wasn't going to have any wide receivers. I didn't see them going 4-8 though. I thought the defense would still be good enough to carry them. I thought they would be up there with Minnesota for record right now. Um, Detroit, their start to the season was discouraging to me, but they have really found their groove here lately. They almost beat the Bills last week, and they have their offense is clicking again. We saw they had one of the best offenses in the league to start the season, and then it went dead. And then their defense picked up, but they didn't have any offense to go with it. And now here they're both meshing together. They're getting some wins, not always pretty wins. They beat Green Bay 15-9. So it's not that they're going out there and scoring 50 points on somebody and letting the other team score 50 as well. They're playing really good defense, and their offense just needs to show up more consistently. And I absolutely think Detroit can make a playoff run here and sneak into the wild card. I look at the West. I think Seattle's glass slipper has fallen off. Geno Smith had a great start to the beginning of the year, and I think they've hit the difficult part of their schedule. But as well, I think teams are kind of figuring out their system that what they had working for them so well in those early weeks. Um, I mean, this is a Seattle team. They can still catch a few wins here and there and wind up in the playoffs. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. But I obviously don't see them winning the division. I look at San Francisco, uh, kind of rough start to the year, and then Trey Lance gets hurt. Garoppolo comes in, he wins a game or two, and then they went on a rough stretch there. I think San Francisco has found their footing. They go to Miami this week for a big, tough test. Um, I don't even think that's a phrase, but it is now. Um,
For sure.
so I mean, we'll get to see how good this San Francisco team really is. I look at the South. I hope Atlanta wins it at this point, just because I hate that whole division. Just needs to die off. The fact that Carolina still has a chance to win it is upsetting to me, to say the least. But we'll have to wait and see. And then I look at the NFC East. I hope the whole division makes the playoff at this point. I think it would be just that much more fun to watch. But to me, the two surprising teams are Washington and the Giants. I mean, everybody kind of knew Philly was going to have a really good year this year. I don't think anybody saw 10-1, but here we are. They sit at 10-1. Dallas is at 8-3. They got Dak back. They're playing really well here the last few weeks. They just beat that Minnesota team who's 9-2 by like 40 points. Um, but the surprise to me is the Giants and the Commanders, just because I think everybody expected the Giants to have a better season than they did last year. I don't think anybody saw 7-4, beating some really good teams along the way. And same with Washington, with so much going on in the front office. And then Carson Wentz got hurt. I don't think anybody saw them being able to get to 7-5, and yet here we are. And very surprising for me to see, to say the least. And the fact that we're talking about all four teams having the possibility of making the playoff is just nuts in my eyes. But I'm excited to see where this goes from here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Uh, Go ahead. I'll pull up the West for you,
Yeah.
or the AFC, not the West.
I knew what you meant. So yeah, over in the AFC side, so we'll start with the AFC South. Tennessee kind of taking the lead, taking the reins of the AFC South. They're up seven, or they're sitting at 7-4. There was a point where Jacksonville was sitting up front, and I thought Jacksonville had a good chance to win this division. Tennessee has found their footing, so good for them. I have no disrespect against Tennessee. Indianapolis 3 games. Well, probably a little more than 3 games behind. No, I guess it would be 3 games. But sitting at 4-7, Jacksonville tied at 4-7, and then Houston at 1-9. I personally think that this could be the best 1-9 team maybe ever. This is a talented young Houston roster. They've lost a good amount of their games by one possession. Very close games. The record is a bit misleading. In the AFC West, the only real good team to come out of it so far is Kansas City, as usual. They're sitting at 9-2. The Chargers sitting not right, but shortly behind them at 6-5. I'll get to the Chargers in a second. The Raiders absolutely disappointing at 4-7, and then the Denver Broncos. I love being right, and Denver sitting at the bottom of this division just makes me feel absolutely happy because I told everybody you don't want Russ, but they begged for him, and there he is. So reap what you sow. Over in the AFC East, Miami and Buffalo fighting it out, both at 8-3. The Jets right behind them, surprisingly, at 7-4, and then New England just behind them at 6-5. Like I said, the NFC East and the AFC East, two best divisions in football. They're showing you why. The AFC East is a little more closely contested from top to bottom, but it's going to be a good race as the season ends up. And then in the AFC North, Baltimore and Cincinnati tied at 7-4, looking to battle out, see who can win that division. Cleveland and Pittsburgh battling to see who can be the worst in that division at 4-7. I think I'll start with the Chargers here, so I don't lose my train of thought here. For me, at least, the Chargers are one of the big surprises in the AFC, um, and I'm kind of at the point where I feel like they shouldn't be a surprise anymore because this is the third year in a row that everybody had good high expectations for the Chargers, and they just haven't lived up to it. Um, this is a team that we thought could be sitting, with one or two loss at this point in the season. They've lost some good games. Obviously, one of those was to Kansas City, but they've just dropped some games that they had no business dropping. I don't think it's Justin Herbert. I still think that Justin Herbert is going to carry that team as far as he can. His wide receiver group is pretty. I don't want to say old, but getting up there. Um, Obviously, he has Austin Eckler. I don't know if it's the defense that's letting things down or what here, but they need to figure out what they got going on and quick. The season's running out, and then as far as any other surprises that might stick out to me, I don't really see a whole lot. I mean, Baltimore has the chance to be 11-0 right now, and they just can't hold on to a damn lead, which isn't necessarily surprising. But I guess that would be the only thing. Oh, the Jets. The Jets would be, and it's not a huge surprise to me. I thought they were going to have a good season, but they just keep finding ways to win games, and sometimes it's in absolutely ridiculous ways. Mike White is the goat. That's all I have to say. What do you got?
No, the Jets are absolutely surprising. I understand Zach Wilson's now replaced, but the fact that he even got them to 7-4, him and Flacco together got
Him
them
and
to 7-4.
Flacco.
Um,
Wow.
which is Flacco hurt? Why is he not playing? I didn't understand what's going on there, but um, so yeah, the Jets are very surprising. I think to everybody, nobody can sit here and say that they saw the Jets being 7-4. Buffalo is surprising to me in the wrong ways. Those three losses they have, yeah, I understand. It's only three losses is not that bad, but those three losses they have were head scratchers to say the least. Um, and then for me, I'm just looking. Look at the AFC West. It's a dumpster fire. First of all, yes, the Chiefs are free and clear of that dumpster fire, but uh, Brandon Stanley is not going to last another season in I almost said San Diego in LA. He should absolutely be fired at the end of the season. I don't care if they make the playoffs or not. He does not deserve to be there. He has shown that he is taking one of the best rosters in the NFL and just running it into the ground because he will not get his head out of that stupid Windows tablet. Um, and then I look at the AFC North. Yeah, I'd see Cleveland at 4-7, and they just got a huge win over Tampa Bay as well this past week. They get Deshaun Watson back this week, and I'll be interested to see where he can take that team from here. If they can go on a run, win the last 6 games, or I think they only have 5 left now, but nonetheless, they
6,
will
yeah.
be in. They have 6. Okay, they would absolutely be in playoff contention here if they can rattle off some wins, especially if they end up beating teams like Cincinnati and Baltimore. I believe they've already beat Cincinnati once this year. And a quick shout out to Cincinnati. This is a team I thought was dead in the water 4 weeks in. They were playing like the team we thought they were going to be last season. Joe Burrow was getting sacked like 9 times a game. It was ugly. And here they are. They're sitting at 7-4, tied for the division lead. So the AFC North race is going to be a lot of fun to watch these last 6 weeks. Like I said, with Watson coming back, I think it makes it a three-team race. They're only 3 games out of that tie. So I'm excited to see where that can go from here.
I just want to say one thing about the Cleveland Browns real quick. So Deshaun Watson coming back. Obviously, he's a talented quarterback. He's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. Um, 10 of his accusers will be in the stands at this game. Now, I have two issues with this. First of all, could you imagine? These girls are, I don't want to say allegedly, in their mind, they are rape victims or sexual assault victims. We'll say sexual assault. Rape might be a bit extensive. I didn't read all the cases, but sexual assault victims. Not only does the NFL invite you to watch, I guess it would be the NFL, maybe it's Deshaun. Somebody invites you to come watch this game that your accuser for a team you're accused at I don't know, fucking legal terms. Deshaun Watson plays for, but he's going to be in the game. It's his first game back. I mean, to me, I don't know. It kind of seems a little messed up. But secondly, he's probably about to throw for 405 tutters. Like, he's probably about to go off. He's like, yeah, they're in the stands. They fucked up the last 11 weeks of my season. Here it goes. Like, so it's going to be interesting to see. And then again, it is Cleveland, so maybe he's going to do the exact opposite. Maybe we'll throw 5 tutters to the opposite team. We'll see, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation.
Um, yeah. So, like I said, with him coming back, it definitely makes the AFC North a lot more interesting to watch to see how that plays out. With everything just being so tightly grouped together, um, I understand Pittsburgh's also sitting at 4-7, but I think the wheels are bound to continue falling off of that team. And I think Mike Tomlin's going to get his first ever losing record this season.
Agreed.
We're going to go ahead and look very quickly at some college basketball. It's been a very chaotic start to the season in the entire world of college basketball. Uh, we have UNC, who has now lost 3 straight games, who is number one. The tournament they had in Portland was absolutely stacked with teams. You had Iowa State, you had Villanova, you had UNC, Alabama, Michigan State. I'm trying to think all the other ones that were out there. Portland, who I thought was going to be like they were just there because they're the host city, and they absolutely mopped the floor of Villanova, and they almost beat UNC night one. So just an absolutely stacked tournament. I expect UNC to fall out of the top 25 now, of course, with losing to Indiana last night. I understand Indiana's a top 10 team. It was 5 points, I want to say, 5 to 10 points. Um,
Something like
but still, losing 4 straight is not going to help voters keep you in the top 25. I should know as a Villanova fan. Um, so, Nick, just your thoughts, right, real quick on the top 25 and how the season has started as a whole.
Yeah, so a lot of good basketball being played. I love college basketball because when you compare it to say college football, the majority of the time most teams are playing some janky FCS school or a group of five school, something like that. There's not really a whole lot of good games the first, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks of the season, minus one or two here or there. But with college basketball, they put these tournaments together, these invitationals, and you get matchups like, Houston and Villanova, UNC, like these people might all be in the same tournament, so you're going to get these good matchups, um, which is my opinion great for the sport. It's more entertaining. You don't got to wait a whole half a season to watch some good games. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say, again, a lot of good basketball being played. Um, Houston was the favorite to win the championship when the season started. When the first tip off went off, they're now currently sitting at number one. Um, Hopefully, for their sake, they can keep that rolling. They look very good on the court. Indiana, as a UNC fan, I got to watch them play the other night, last night. Yeah, last night.
Yeah.
And they look like a very good team as well. I'm just watching them. There were times where they're just making the right plays, seeing things that a lot of people won't see. They're going to be very hard to stop. As far as coming from a UNC fan, I was just texting you about this shortly before the show. Um, if you've watched UNC, you'll realize that they're playing a lot of their freshmen. There's 4 freshmen that are coming in that are getting a lot of minutes playing. Unless you have Puff Johnson, who's not a starter, but he's getting extra minutes. He was the one that puked in the Natty last year. I personally think that Hubert Davis is looking at this and saying, "Look, this is supposed to be our year. We made it last year. We didn't get it. Why didn't we get it? Well, we had 6 guys that we could trust to put on the floor in a championship game. And let me tell you, that is not a winning formula in NCAA or really in any basketball world whatsoever. So I think Hubert Davis is kind of like, look, we might take some losses here early in the season, but we're going to get these guys playing time. We're going to make sure everybody is ready to play come tournament time, because come tournament time, if Armando Baycott goes down again and now Pete Nance has got to take over that 5 spot, okay, well, we have 4 freshmen that I know that I can plug in here and be good. So I'm not worried as a UNC fan yet. Um, Part of me keeps telling me that I should be, but due to the fact that we weren't even ranked, squeaked into the tournament, and ended up going to the Natty last year, I have faith in Davis and the 4 returning starters we have, plus Pete Nance is Larry Nance's son, or Larry Nance Jr.'s son. So some lineage there, some history with him. So we'll see how the season goes. If we're sitting not unranked like in a month or two, definitely ask me, because at that point I'm probably freaking out.
Yeah. I mean, to me, last night, as you mentioned, with UNC losing, Michigan State also lost, and it wasn't even a close loss. It was a 30-point loss to Notre Dame. Um, uh, Looking at the rest of these standings, Purdue obviously playing very good basketball right now. The reason I can't believe they were ranked as low as they were to start the year. Now they're up to number 5. They're also getting some number 1 votes. People are upset that they weren't number 1. I Listen, they've had a very good start to the year, but Houston has came in as a clear favorite to start the year, and they've played very good basketball to start. Houston deserves to be number 1. People I was scrolling through Twitter just trying to find top 25, like a picture of the top 25 rankings. It was just people complaining about Purdue not being ranked number 1. You got to
And
get over
I don't
yourselves
I
a
don't
little
think
bit.
they deserve it. I think that they're a
Yeah.
very good team. But a lot of them relies on, it's Eddie,
Mhm.
Edie, the big man. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what nationality he is, but he's huge and he's an absolute baller. Um, it, Without him, I don't think Purdue is nearly as good of a team. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Obviously, as a fan of a team in the Big East, seeing Creighton and UConn playing so well and ranked so high, uh, Villanova has had a very tough start to the year, to say the least. I believe we've lost 5 games now. But at the same time, I also understand. Listen, we have a first-year head coach. We do have a lot of new faces to the team that made a Final Four last year. I'm not hitting the panic button yet. I'm not saying this guy should be fired or anything like that. He definitely needs time to develop and learn to speak to these players. I understand he was an assistant, but still, once you get handed the reins, I mean, you need to redevelop a lot of these relationships and set new boundaries. And so I still have faith in him. I still have faith in the team. Kind of like you're saying with UNC right now. Once we get into conference play, I'm excited. I want to see where this goes from there. How we're playing, once we're facing UConn and Creighton and these difficult teams in the season a little bit later on. And of course, come tournament time, if we can make a run, say we don't win the regular season Big East title, we can always go out and win the tournament and make our way in. And worst comes to worst, we don't make the tournament this year. I am okay with it. It'll suck. Hopefully, we can go win the NIT at least. Um, but we have a lot to talk about with college football, so we're just going to go ahead and move into that. We're going to probably spend a good hour talking some college football here. It was an absolutely insane week 13 in college football. Before we get to the week 13 wrap up, let's go ahead. There's already been a lot of new head coaches announced in college football, so we're going to talk about that quick. One that is not on here that was just announced before we went live. Tom Herman, the former Texas coach that was unjustly fired, is been hired at FAU, so that is not on this list, but that was just confirmed before we went on the air. Trent Dilfer, the former NFL quarterback, I believe he played for the Ravens. I don't remember if he was a quarterback when they won the Super Bowl in 2000 or not, but he's been coaching high school football at prep academies the last few years. Done pretty well there, and UAB has decided to take the leap on him. Everybody's a little surprised they didn't go with their interim coach. Of course, their normal head coach resigned a little, I believe it was in August, so just before the season started. Hired an intern for the year. He went 6-6, got them the bowl eligibility, did not make the Conference USA title game for, I believe it would put him in the 4th year in a row. But everybody thought he should be brought back. He was not. So they're taking a gamble on hiring Trent Dilfer. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. The big splash of so far has been Hugh Freeze being hired by Alabama. Of course, Freeze has coached at Liberty the last few years since being
Auburn.
fired from Ole Miss. What?
You said Alabama.
I said Liberty.
What? No, no, no. You said
Oh,
Hugh Freeze
okay.
going to Alabama.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, he's going to
What?
Auburn,
Yeah.
from Liberty. Of course, he was fired from Ole Miss a few years ago, for the many, many violations he had, but also running an escort service off of his work phone from Ole Miss.
That'll do it.
Yeah. At Ole Miss, he went 39 and 25. In the last few years at Liberty, he went 31 and 15. So this is a coach. He knows how to win. But maybe the good Christian people at Liberty have righted his way, and he won't be such a scumbag anymore. But we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we'll change at all. Give it 3 years. I can. Hugh Freeze is just like Urban Meyer, except younger. He doesn't have heart problems that he can rely on to get him out of situations. Um, Brent Key, who took over as the interim coach at Georgia Tech, really turned that program around. We went 4-4 as a head coach. They just missed out on bowl eligibility this year. Did a great job turning that program around once he got handed the reins. He gets hired on as the full-time head coach. Matt Rule will be returning to the college football ranks. Uh, Speaking to some Nebraska fans, they are not really happy about it. I think Matt Rule will do great things at Nebraska. I think he'll at least get that program back into making some bowl games. It might take a year or two, but
Yeah, I
Matt
don't.
Rule
I don't
has.
think he's going to take them to like elite. They're not going to be competing against Ohio State or anything like that. But when you look at his past record, he's taken 1, 2 win teams and made them 9, 10 win teams. If you're a Nebraska fan,
Mhm.
in my opinion, now I know Tony's not going to be happy with that, but if you're a Nebraska fan and you start winning 9, 10 games again, I'd be happy. I'll put it
Yeah.
to you that way.
I mean, he's somebody that went into Baylor when after the Art Briles stuff came out, and after that program was decimated, they lost a bunch of players, lost a bunch of scholarships. In 3 seasons, he took them from a 1-win team to a 10-win Sugar Bowl team. So he definitely has a pedigree to turn these teams around. I definitely give him some time, and Nebraska is going to put some resources behind him. I think he can turn Nebraska into an elite program if given the right time and the right tools, and if he doesn't leave too soon. Obviously, I think Baylor has gotten very lucky. Once he left, they brought in a very good coach. Again, they won the Sugar Bowl last year. They've made a lot of progress as a program year in year out. They're a team that challenges for the Big Ten title, or excuse me, Big 12 title. And so if God forbid Matt Rule decides to leave Nebraska in 3 years, hopefully it turns into a Baylor situation and not a Temple situation. Kenny Dillingham will be leaving Oregon as the offensive coordinator. He is heading to be the head coach at Arizona State. He is an alum of Arizona State. Of course, Arizona State fired uh, 4 weeks into the season after they lost to Eastern Michigan. Um, Notable thing, Oregon to go to Arizona State week next play in Tempe. And Luke Fickle, this one was surprising to me. A lot of rumors leaving this year. I did not think it was going to be to Wisconsin. I thought Wisconsin was going to hang on to their interim coach, Jim Leonhart, or Leonhart was going to go somewhere else. But here, Luke Fickle will be heading to Wisconsin. Fickle was 57 and 18 at Cincinnati. Of course, took them to the playoff last year. So Wisconsin is getting a big time coach. I think going forward, Nebraska and Wisconsin are going to have a very good rivalry. If Rule can, of course, turn that program around at Nebraska, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Your thoughts on the new hires, real quick, before we look at vacancies still open?
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm getting over the flu for any minute. Doesn't know. Um, So I already talked about Matt Rule. Luke Fickle, I think, is a great hire for Wisconsin. I didn't think that Fickle was going to end up in Wisconsin. I thought he might, try to end up somewhere a little more. I don't want to say high profile, but high profile. But I think that he can really add to this Wisconsin team and make them a contender. Again, sort of like Matt Rule in Nebraska, maybe not necessarily a college football playoff contender, but a contender that's pushing 10 wins every season. He obviously knows what he's doing. So I'm kind of interested to see what he does with that Wisconsin team. Like you said, I think Wisconsin and Nebraska are about to start butting heads a whole lot. Um, those are really the two that stuck out with me the most. Trent Dilfer, if he would have gone to a Power Five, some sort of like maybe the Nebraska or Wisconsin job, I'd see a little more problem with it. But I think UAB was a good place for him to come, and kind of see what he can do, see what he can put onto the field at the collegiate level. Hugh Freeze at Auburn, huge. I'm not really sure how I feel about Auburn's chances as a whole. I mean, Freeze is going to be good there, but there's so much competition in the SEC, and like we seen with the last coach, it's hard to get those steal those recruits from Bama, Georgia, LSU. And name almost any team in the SEC, and or at least at the top of the SEC. But I think that he's going to do better than what's currently being done at Auburn. And then Brent Key, Georgia Tech. I'm here for Georgia Tech. I hope they keep going up. So let's get it.
Let's go ahead and look at some the vacancies still left. Cincinnati, obviously, Liberty, Stanford, Colorado, USF, as we just mentioned before. FAU is off the board now. Tom Herman will be heading there. Super excited to see Tom Herman get his feet back under him. He was a Bears assistant last year. I don't think he was still doing it this year. Um, but I'm excited to see him go there, get his feet under him, start winning again. And again, I don't think he deserves to be fired from Texas. Wasn't the biggest fan of him at Texas, but he was doing a service. He was doing the same exact thing that old Burger King employee of the month is doing. Um,
Sarkeesian.
yeah, that's what it is.
God, that
Uh,
suit was ugly as hell.
um, which so of course I think every name here has been associated with Deion Sanders at some point already. Which one do you think would be the biggest to get filled? Colorado, of course, has been the laughing stock of the entire college football nation for years now. Stanford has had a down 3 years, I want to say now. Cincinnati is a big school to go to. Thank you to Luke Fickle and the winning he's done there. Liberty again. They've had some big names go through there. They've gone to a lot of good bowl games. Stumbled towards the end of the season, especially once they knew their head coach was leaving. They just got blown out by New Mexico State of all schools. And USF, who once in a while will have a really good year. I have heard Scott Frost linked to that job, but again, I've also heard Deion Sanders. A lot going on. Which one do you see being the highest profile hire out of all these?
Yeah, so the two schools that I've heard the most about when it comes to Dion is Colorado and USF. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him go there. But with this, I hadn't heard at least up until probably about 2 days ago. I hadn't heard anything about him going to Cincinnati, but I also hadn't heard about Cincinnati needing a head coaching job up until a little while ago. So I'm interested to see. I think that somebody's going to have to take a chance, or at least when you think about Cincinnati would be taking a chance on old prime time. I think he's proven himself. The recruiting, he got the number one recruit in the country. He's proven himself on the field. They've been absolutely phenomenal as far as on the field play goes. So I think that if Cincinnati thinks that they want him, they might end up grabbing him. But I really see him going somewhere. eh, As far as what I currently think, I like I said, there's a lot of talk. From everything that I had read and gathered, Colorado seemed like it was going to be his landing spot. But again, that was before Cincinnati kind of became a player in this. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Cincinnati might not be willing to take a chance on him quite yet. But wherever he goes, just plan on it being turned around. I don't. I'm not saying he's going to make Colorado a college football playoff contender or nothing. But definitely be ready to see them jump up. And as far as anything else goes, one thing about college football is it's unpredictable, and that's whether it's on the field or off the field. So any one of these spots could be filled by literally any name you could possibly throw out there for a head coaching job. And that's the joy of it. So I'm interested to see how things shake out here.
Yeah, if I think if Dion's going to go anywhere, it's got to be a Power Five school. I think he wants to go somewhere, and if he can't turn them around, he wants more of an opportunity to go to the playoff. He doesn't want to take over, say, a USF or like a Liberty. Hey, we're undefeated, we're having a great year, but we're in a group of five, or in Liberty's case, we're in an independent school. It's even more difficult for us to get into a playoff. Cincinnati, of course, moving to the Big 12, I think helps. I have a feeling Cincinnati, if depending on how much of Luke Fickle's staff is staying behind, they might try and promote within. Um, so it'd be interesting to see what direction Cincinnati goes in. I think Dion's most likely landing spot at this point is Stanford or Colorado. Um, and we're going to talk about Ohio State here in a minute. I don't want to. I'm not saying Ryan Day's getting fired yet, but we're going to talk about them here in a minute, and what I think Day's future is going to be. Um, So let's go ahead. Let's look at the standings right now, and we're going to talk about Week 13 here a little bit. So Georgia and Michigan are number 1 and number 2. There was a little bit of debate if Michigan could jump them. I'm fine with Georgia staying at number 1. TCU slides up to number 3. USC all the way up to number 4. Ohio State falls to 5th. Alabama's at 6th. Tennessee at 7th. Penn State at 8th, Clemson 9, Kansas State 10, Utah 11, Washington 12, Florida State jumps up to 13, LSU falls to 14th, Oregon State all the way up to 15th, Oregon falls to 16th, UCLA 17th, Tulane 18th, South Carolina into the rankings for the first time ever in the college football playoff ranking system at 19th. Texas is 20th, Notre Dame falls to 21st, UCF 22nd, North Carolina falls to 23rd, Mississippi State 24th, and NC State rounds out your top 25. So, of course, the big game of the weekend was Michigan Ohio State. Was a 3-point game at halftime. Did not finish that way at all. This is the second year in a row now we've seen this game be deadlocked almost going into halftime and come out and Michigan just run the ball all over them in the second half. Blake Corum again was not 100%. It didn't matter. Donovan Edwards just ran all over them in the second half. I believe he had 2 70-yard touchdowns. They had 2 70-yard passing touchdowns in the first half. So just complete falling apart by Ohio State. I don't think there's any other way to put that. We'll talk about some other games here in a second, but just your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, so one thing that I know that you're going to bring up here in a little bit, Ryan Day came out and said, "Yeah, we're dropping 100 on Michigan." Listen, all right, if you're going to come out and you're going to say that you're going to drop 100 on a team, especially a team that is currently ranked, at least as high as you or around as high as you, you better come out and at least put in a hella good effort. And being tied at half was already laughable. It's like, yeah, obviously you're not going to run over these guys like you thought they were, and then to just come out and get blatantly bullied in the second half. Now, look, I don't have a lot of room to talk as a Penn State fan because we got bullied the entire game by Michigan. But we also didn't come out and say we were going to drop 100. So the big thing for me, I knew that if Michigan could keep their run game going, Ohio State wasn't going to have a chance. And early on in the game, if it weren't for Michigan, really, the one touchdown, the 170-yard touchdown pass was a good play. The other one was luck. They threw like a hitch, and the guy broke a tackle and was gone. Without those two plays, that first half looks a whole lot different, and the game itself might look a whole lot different. But just uh, wow, there's a reason that it was hyped. It was arguably an early playoff game. I'm just glad to see Ohio State. I really could have cared less who won. I was hoping they tied the whole time. But due to the fact that Ohio State talked shit before the game started, specifically Ryan Day talking about dropping 100 points, I was glad to see them go down. And it's always a good day when Buckeye fans are crying. Minus Jesse. I love you, Jesse. I don't like seeing you sad.
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to bring up the 100-point thing just because that's rivalry talk. You're going to have that no matter what every year. But coming into the season, I did say I felt like this was a put up or shut up year for Ryan Day. He had arguably one of the best offenses returning in college football. It's Smith and Jigba was hurt, but you still had Marvin Harrison Jr. You still had C.J. Stroud. You had Travion Henderson, who again I understand was hurt for this game, but still, for as well as they played in the first half, to just completely fall apart in the second half falls on the coaching. And they had a cupcake schedule up to this point in the season, but again, so did Michigan. And I feel like Ryan Day is not the guy for the job. He was handed the golden key from Urban Meyer, and again, I said all this at the beginning of the year. We can go back and watch the Big Ten, season preview and hear me say it. But I thought, he was going to put up this year. I thought he was finally going to get it together and show why he was given the key. But it's been very clear that without that Urban Meyer roster, without that Urban Meyer coaching, I don't think this Ohio State team is a national championship contender. We saw in 2020 again. I feel like they got the benefit of their schedule. They didn't. They would have beat Michigan that year. Yes, I 100% agree. But only playing Big Ten schools, and to be honest, they did not play any good Big Ten schools. And getting virtue of playing Northwestern in the Big Ten championship, getting into the playoffs. I understand they beat a very good Clemson team that year, but I think Dabo Swinney is a little overrated as well as being evidenced by what he's doing this year. But I think I give it one more year. If he loses to Michigan next year, I think he gets fired. I don't care if he goes 11-1 and that one loss is to Michigan. Ohio State does not tolerate losing to Michigan. The way I feel like Michigan has kind of tolerated it before, with some of their other coaches before Jim Harbaugh. I mean, we saw before last year Harbaugh was 0-5, 0-4 against Ohio
Yeah,
State.
and was on the
Um,
hot seat.
yeah.
It was scorching
Um,
hot.
I think Ohio State is not as lenient with that. I think if he loses next year to Michigan, I think he's out again, no matter what his record is. And now you have drama with them in the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl came out first and said, "Listen, we might consider taking Penn State this year over Ohio State." Ohio, and they said, "We understand when the Big Ten champion goes to the playoffs. You know, we got to take the next highest ranked team. Well, we don't need to. We are the committee. We can choose whoever we want." They said, Ohio State's been here 2 of the last 4 years. We kinda want some different teams. There's also a possibility of a year-to-year rematch with them in Utah. So they're like, "Yeah, we just wanna kinda mix things up a little bit." Well, Ohio State's response is, "Well, we wanna go to the Orange Bowl anyway. We don't wanna go there." So now there's drama there. I think it's just the fact that if Utah wins the Pac-12 title, they don't wanna get mopped by them because they should have got mopped last year. But here we are. Utah, Penn State would still be a good game. I think it's going to end up being Washington, though, in the Rose Bowl, especially if Utah loses. They're definitely going to slide back more than one spot. So I think Washington will get the nod there. Still, very good matchup. Excited to see that. We shall wait and see how everything shakes out, though. Moving on, the other big game, obviously, Oregon losing to Oregon State. I didn't agree with them falling 9 spots, but or 7. I believe they fell 7 spots. It is what it is. Clemson should have fallen a hell of a lot farther. I understand it's a 1-point loss, but it was at home, and they fell, I believe, only 1 spot total. They
Yeah,
should not be in the top 10.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm not excited about that. I think that's the big mistake that they made. The other debate, and you, Slade, and I were talking about the other day. Obviously, we put out our top 6 over the weekend. Um, in my top 6 that day, I put Alabama over Tennessee. But again, the statement I made to you guys last night is, listen, we're just a bunch of jackasses. We can basically say whatever we want. It doesn't
yeah,
have any weight. The college football committee needs, and I understand. This is exactly what they're doing. Is they're looking at the situation, saying Hendon Hooker is hurt. He's not coming back for the rest of the year. Therefore, Tennessee's not a better team. The way I'm saying you need to look at it though is not only has Tennessee beat Alabama, and yes, I understand it was only a 3-point game, but they beat Alabama. LSU also beat Alabama, and Tennessee beat them by 20 points. And again, Slade made a very good point. Alabama's 2 losses are by 5 points. That's it. And or actually, it's 4 points. And so I agree with him that that is a fair way to look at it. But the other way that they need to look at it is not only has Tennessee beat Alabama, and I understand Tennessee's 2 losses weren't very pretty. They lost by, I believe it's almost 50 points total between the 2 losses. Um, but when you have a clear head-to-head matchup like that, um, now right now I don't think it matters at all. You can put Tennessee at 6 or Tennessee at, you can flip-flop Tennessee and Alabama all you want. But if it worst comes to worst, if it comes down to one of those 2 teams being able to get into the playoffs, I would absolutely argue Tennessee deserves to be in over Alabama just for those reasons. But I've talked a lot here the last few minutes. I'll let you kind of give your
no,
thoughts on the whole weekend. And
that's all right. That's all right. My thoughts on the 6th spot. I tweeted this out. I don't think any team deserves to be 6. When I look at that top 6 ranking, I think like these are 6 teams that you could put any combination of the 6 in them, and we would get, hopefully should get, good playoff matches. I don't think, especially with, if Hooker was still in Tennessee or still healthy for Tennessee, then Tennessee 6 all day. I put Tennessee 6 in my ranking. Um, but without Hooker, I don't think that either Bama or Tennessee stands a chance against a Georgia, Michigan, even a TCU or USC. So that's just my thought as far as the 6 goes. I had Tennessee 6. I don't think that, yeah, Bama's losses are by 5 points or 4 points. But one big thing for me is like everybody sits here and they like to throw out stats. Oh, well, this team only lost by this much, or this team beat this team by this much. I watch game film. That's what I do. That's when I look and when I make my decisions. That's what I do. Okay, well, Tennessee and Alabama might be close. Yeah, Tennessee beat Alabama, but when I watch them, I think Tennessee is the better team. Um, that's just how I do it. I understand, who knows what the committee does exactly to figure this stuff out. But that's just how I do it. I don't feel any team deserves to be at 6, but somebody's got to be. If you want to throw Bama in there, you want to throw Tennessee in there. I mean, I wouldn't argue if you want to throw Penn State in there, other than the fact that I wouldn't agree with you, even as a Penn State fan. But nonetheless, I could give two shits. I don't think it's going to matter come the end of next week. With that being said, I have a very, very intriguing feeling in my gut that one of those top 4 teams is going to lose. It's probably not going to be Georgia or Michigan, so it's going to have to be TCU or USC. But I just something's telling me Ohio State, by the grace of God or Satan or whoever you might want to blame it on, is going to squeak into a college football playoff. And quite honestly, I don't feel good about them facing any of those top 4 teams. Maybe TCU. I think they might match up pretty decently against TCU. But I don't know. This is a TCU that every time somebody doubts them, they seem to prove everybody wrong. So we'll see. We got a great week or great couple weeks of football coming up, but definitely leading up to a great weekend of football here.
Yeah. So as far as if we're looking at the top 4 and who I think is going to make the playoffs after this weekend, and we will talk more about this on Saturday on Out of the Tunnel. I think Georgia and Michigan can both lose, and they're completely fine if they lose their conference championship game. I think no matter what, they still make it. If I were on the committee and TCU lost this weekend, I would still put them in the top 4 just because of the fact that they ran the table in the regular season and their loss was a rematch loss from a team that they had previously beat. So I would still argue they deserve to be in. I know the committee is going to take them out if they lose. Um, if both them and USC lose, you could argue Ohio State's going to get in, but then it's a 2-loss Alabama team versus a 1-loss TCU team, and that's what the committee is going to make it about. But yeah, if USC loses, they're absolutely going to slide Ohio State back up into there. The committee is just praying this weekend that for their sake, they want a Georgia Michigan national championship game. They don't want to put that game in the semifinal again. Last year it worked out because there was a high profile team getting in with Alabama. You got a Georgia Alabama rematch, and that's what they wanted. This year, the committee wants Georgia Michigan in the national championship game. That's going to do the best viewers and all this other stuff. Um, and so the committee is just hoping that either both of them win or both of them lose, so they can just slide them back in and keep that matchup
Yeah.
saved for the national championship game. Um, if they both lose, it'll be hilarious to see TCU be number 1, though. So there's a lot of people I've seen online panicking. Oh, there's so many nightmare scenarios going on this weekend. I'm like, there's really not. Unless TCU gets blown out and USC loses, Alabama is not going to be able to get into the playoffs. They're not just going to magically leapfrog a 1-loss Ohio State team whose 1 loss is most likely to the Big Ten champion. If I'm looking at Georgia and Michigan on their own though this week, I would say Michigan is a more likely to lose. Purdue gets the name spoiler makers for a reason. We've seen them ruin many perfect seasons, many good seasons. This is going to be their first ever trip to the Big Ten title game. I mean, they're not going there to lay down for anybody. I said last week on the show that it was Michigan Ohio State didn't matter versus Purdue was going to be the best matchup no matter what. And Purdue getting in, they bring a very good offense when they want to play like it. I think they'll play up to Michigan's level. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. We're going to see Michigan's defense tested a lot like it was in the first half with the Ohio State game. So I think it's going to be a very good game. And if you
Yeah,
want to
Aiden
hear,
O'Connell is easily one of the most accurate passers in the country, and he's overlooked because that Purdue team is pretty shaky, especially on Purdue's not bad by any means. I think their record doesn't necessarily reflect how good of a team that they actually are. But O'Connell is definitely one of the best passers as far as accuracy goes. And
Mhm.
like you said, Michigan's definitely going to be tested. If you're Michigan, you're not going in there saying you're dropping 100 on them. That's for sure.
No, I think Jim Harbaugh knows better than that though. Um, Real quick, so the other big news that we have not talked about as well is that the Rose Bowl has officially signed their contract to allow the college football playoff to expand to 12 teams in 2024. That is in 2 years, unlike my brain could fathom this morning. And so, in the spirit of that happening, So the way that the format is going to work that they have announced, so the first round of playoff games will be seeded 5 through 12, um, and those games will be hosted at the higher seeds home school or whatever location they want to choose. If they want to choose a neutral site, it'll be up to the higher seeds discretion. From there, they'll then be played at a New Year's Six bowl location, um, and then the semifinals will also be in the New Year's Six rotation as well. So, with that being said, there needs to be two bowl games added to that rotation, so that way they can host the quarterfinals and then the semifinals. We know the New Year's Six already. It's the Fiesta, the Cotton Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the Peach Bowl. And so, our top five today, in the spirit of the college football playoff expanding, is what uh, ranking top five bowls that we think will get added to that rotation to help not only bigger stadiums or things like that, but also prestige and so on to jump into that rotation to add on as well. Nick, you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. I would because I didn't put rankings on mine. I was like,
Yeah, I
who
shouldn't say
knows?
ranked
So
1 through 5, but
yeah,
number five, I put the Texas Bowl, which is played in Houston. The reason I put this on here is just because it's an NFL stadium. It's a huge stadium, so obviously you don't have to worry about seating capacity or anything like that. Um, but the only reason I have a five is just because it's not a very prestigious bowl. Nobody cares about the Texas Bowl. I also wouldn't be surprised if they just add these on just a stadium rotation, saying, hey, we're just going to go to Houston this year. Keep the Texas Bowl, but this is just going to be playing in Houston or so on. Number four, I put the LA Bowl. Again, brand new stadium. I think they would love to have it there. The reason I have it so low is just because nobody knows what the LA Bowl is. It's actually a pretty new bowl, but they get to go play in the brand new state of the art stadium at SoFi. Number three, I have the Las Vegas Bowl. Again, brand new stadium, huge. They would love to have it there. Reason is at three
yeah.
is just because of the name. Number two, I put the Alamo Bowl. Um, I think this name carries a lot more weight than people realize, and it's also a pretty big stadium in Texas.
It's hard to
I think,
forget.
yeah. Uh, so I think that should definitely be on the committee's consideration list. My number one pick, I actually went with the Citrus Bowl. This is a New Year's Day bowl game every year. It always tends to be a great matchup between the Big Ten and the SEC. This been around. Winner gets a big bowl of oranges, just like the Orange Bowl, which is I always thought was weird. Um,
Yeah,
but
I'm not
nonetheless,
gonna lie. Until like 2 years ago, I thought they were the same thing.
so did I. Like I always saw these dudes like holding up a bowl of oranges. Like, oh,
Yeah,
but it's just Citrus Bowl. But again, a huge stadium in Orlando, so obviously you don't have to worry about the weather as much. You can get rain, but you don't have to worry about snow or anything like that. And so those are my top five. Those are the five I think the committee should look at again, unless they're just like we're just going to pick random stadiums to host it at every year. We shall wait and see.
for sure. I didn't rank mine, but I'll say number five here. I also had the Las Vegas Bowl. I feel like that was kind of like a pretty given one. You're gonna have, especially with playoff implications, why not have it in Vegas? Everybody's kind of jumping on that bandwagon, like, hey, look, we can put sports teams in the sports betting capital. So whatever. I also had the Texas Bowl. Same reasons. It's a big enough stadium. It's got some prestige to it. Uh, for three, I have the Boca Raton Bowl, which is played in St. Petersburg. I added it on here because, first of all, what you say Boca Raton, anybody know? Pretty much anybody knows what you're talking about. I believe it FAU Stadium.
Yeah,
I think, yeah. So I don't know what the seating capacity is exactly, but I just thought it'd be dope. Number two, I have the Duke's Mayo Bowl. It's kind of one of those, like, I feel like the bowl game itself isn't really that prestigious, but when you say the Duke's Mayo Bowl, if you watch college football, if somebody says that to you, you know what they're talking about, just because like Mayo. But yeah, it's played in North Carolina. It's got plenty of seats for all the fans. And it's Duke's Mayo. And last but not least, I didn't know what to put here. I kind of wanted to throw something in there that wasn't. A lot of these games should be good, warm, fair weather games. So I added the Music City Bowl, played in Nashville, Tennessee. I think the reason I added that on there is because there's a little change up. It's a little farther north. I guess it'd actually be pretty close to the Duke's Mayo Bowl as far as north goes, but nonetheless, Little Nashville love, little country music. Ain't nobody hate that except people that don't like country music. But I think that that would just be a cool thing. You know, they could probably do some stuff with some country music stars, make it, make a little extra something. So I thought it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the Music City Bowl is a good one to put on there, as well as the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Again, I feel like the last few years, especially ever since Duke's took that game over, they've invested heavily into the marketing for it, and it's become more and more of a household name every year, and a very prized matchup, surprisingly. Um,
Isn't there like a whole thing on Twitter for the past like 2 years?
yeah, the winning coach gets dunked in mayonnaise.
Yes, that's what it is. I couldn't remember
So
what it was.
yeah.
Good times, good
But just real quick to look at your seating capacities. So Bank of America is 75,000, almost 75,500. FAU Stadium seats 30,000.
Oof. All right, we're
So
gonna have to scratch that one off the list.
but yeah, no, it'll be very interesting to see how they come up with this going forward. Like I said, if they're gonna pick bowl games to add to this, or were you just gonna kind of say, hey, Vegas is gonna host it every year, but they still get the Vegas Bowl or whatever happens with that. So it'll be interesting to see how the College Football Playoff Committee handles that going forward. We thank you guys very much for checking us out today and joining us for the show. Do not forget to come back Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m. for Out of the Tunnel Live. It will unfortunately be the last one of the regular season. We will still do another live stream for our Swear Jar Sweat. And also, we'll most likely be back from the national championship and things like that and do other live streams throughout the year. But last dedicated, well, I don't want to say dedicated, but last regular season college football one. But of course, any scheduling going forward, we will let you guys know on our social medias, which are scrolling down below. So make sure you follow them as well. Uh, Other than that, I think that's it. I think we'll see you Saturday. Uh,
Uh,
Slay will not be here again because his coworkers suck. But we will see you guys Saturday. Have a great rest of your day.
for sure. See you guys.